Tea Talks. I think we are finally past Black Girl Magic, and I'm not mad about it. Calm down, hear me out. Kicking off 23 with one of these, fam. And if you're new here, a tea talk is like a TED talk where you don't learn anything. Actually, some might say that makes this exactly like a TED talk, but moving on. Hoy hoy, it's your girl T, aka nappy-headed jojoba, not nappy, not jojoba, nappy-headed jojoba. You have to say the whole thing. It's like Del the Funky Homo Sapien. I know it's the end of January and the whole things we're leaving behind and blah blah year are supposed to drop in December or the first week of the new year latest. Nevertheless, she persisted, and one thing I want to leave behind in 22 once and for all is Black Girl Magic. I've actually had this video topic percolating for more than 3 years, so we on the late show for real with this one. I've even put this topic in a couple polls on my Patreon over the years because whenever I can't decide among however many video ideas I have to film, I let my peoples decide. But this Black Girl Magic rant, she never won. She came real close, but alas, always a bridesmaid. If I'm being for real, Black Girl Magic and Magical Black Girl are at this point really dated sounding and feel like they've run their course compared to when I did them polls. I still see them hashtagged with far more frequency than makes sense to me for how dated they sound. And I think that's low-key why I'm finally comfortable doing this video on today. I realize that this is YouTube and there will always be f***wits who deliberately misunderstand you or who react to a video thumbnail or title they don't like, paying a zero attention to the actual content of the content. I'm also more comfortable doing this video now because at this point in my YouTube game, that's fine with me. A view is a view. Anyway, dated phrasing or not, Black Girl Magic evokes a particular time in interneting that I want to discuss, as well as a real world sentiment that I actually think we, meaning Black women and girls, perhaps ought to, at this point in time, 2023 AD, leave behind. Black Girl Magic is a good thing, or it was once you go back to its origin and original intention. Kashawn Thompson is considered by many to be the one who first coined the idea, and I guess you could say V1 of Black Girl Magic when she started hashtagging Black Girls Are Magic 10 years ago, back in 2013, when all your faves were still writing the racist tweets that would briefly get them canceled some 6 to 8 years later, depending on who we're talking about. Thompson, however, does not own the trademark for Black Girl Magic. That's Beverly Bond, same lady behind Black Girls Rock, and also a dope DJ, by the way. Back to Kashawn Thompson. She said in an interview back in 2015, which I have linked below, that she started using the hashtag to shine a light on how Black women and girls' accomplishments might seem to others to come out of thin air, because a lot of times the only people supporting us are our fellow Black women. Black Girl Magic is uplifting. Indeed, the coining of the phrase allowed an under-celebrated, hyper-marginalized, routinely erased group to at least see each other. Love that for us. Had my magical Black girl hoodie on and everything back in the day. Shout out to Evelyn from the internets. It was a game recognized game type of moment, and Black girls lifted each other up loudly and publicly after pretty much no one else had done for a handful of centuries. At its core, it's an abject refusal of a social structure that places us on the bottom and everyone else on top. Nevertheless, we persisted. We already know what it is, with the unending imitation and co-opting of Black girl swag, followed by them trying to sell our own shit back to us. I just started reading this book last night, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments, and Hartman, the author. Early in the book, she touches on how even the 1920s flapper aesthetic was a ripoff of the styles of the Black girls of the time. Ghetto until proven fashionable was popping off in the middle of Jim Crow, y'all. Everyone wants to be a Black girl, but don't nobody want to be a Black girl. Anyway, I'll link that book below on not Amazon in the unlikely event anyone cares. Back to Black Girl Magic as a crystallized moment in the zeitgeist. I hate that word. I do think that the core tenet of public mutual uplift amongst Black girls from that time has continued to the present day in a way that it might not have without having that moment in our culture. But over time, the idea of Black Girl Magic was complicated and contorted in ways that I am certain have been discussed in Twitter think pieces at whatever points in time, but I do YouTube, not Twitter, so here we are. Let's at least be clear about how Black Girl Magic ultimately dehumanized us. Black Girl Magic succinctly shone a light on Black women being the light. In just 3 words. Unfortunately, it also subsumed things like hard work, exhaustion, dedication, and the obstacles often darkening the path for us effectively whitewashing that this darkness even exists. In just 3 words, it is far more palatable for liberals to see the end result of a black girl achieving the unachievable and then lazily hashtag it Black Girl Magic rather than address why this girl had to face such obstacles in the first place. Turning nothing into something isn't magic. It's hard. It demands sacrifice and dedication and all sorts of not particularly glamorous labor. You know, blood, sweat, tears. Black girl magic ain't magic. We just make it look magical. It's resourcefulness, tenacity, ingenuity, and far too often doing these things whilst ignoring and burying your own fatigue, health struggles, needs, sometimes straight up pain and suffering. Over time, the more that I saw that hashtag being used and who was using it, the more it became clear to me that it does not advance us to reduce all of this to some sort of search engine optimized mysticism. Black women and girls haven't necessarily had the room to properly acknowledge our need to be cared for instead of always taking care of those around us, to make clear our need to rest, our need to not show up, because that's not just being human when you've been designated as magical. That's weakness. This is exacerbated when we as Black women play into this by viewing our own humanity as a weakness or as invalid en masse. I'm guilty as fuck of this. I don't ask for help when I need it. I'm stoic to a degree that is toxic, and then it only harms me. Black girl magic, as time wore on and the phrase was ostensibly co-opted to pander back to us, it helped to cement the idea that Black women that they shouldn't be vulnerable, feel pain, or make mistakes, especially the types of mistakes that other women do get forgiven for making. What might be worst of all is it enshrines the idea that Black girls owe you magic, that Black girls don't get to take time off to just be regular and not especially magical. We tired. Plus, far too often, this so-called magic is just romanticizing us doing shit no one else has stepped up to do, even when we're tired, scared, hungry, underpaid, and severely underappreciated. It often means doing shit that will get ripped off by people in positions of privilege with zero acknowledgement or credit given to you. There's case after case of this happening in history. I've discussed this happening to me directly within my line of work before, and we constantly see it even with the Zoomers and the TikTok dances. Black girls and women often don't get the room to even explore and understand our own vulnerabilities. The magical Black girl trope over time became more or less the same as the strong Black woman trope, which, to quote Danielle Young, makes me roll my eyes to the white meat. Now, the folks with zero depth may be asking,
but what's wrong with being strong?
Well, guess what? Nobody asked you, Frank. That's an old callback. Shout out if you've been riding with me long enough to remember that. Of course, strength is a virtue, but when you paint an entire gender with one brush and then place them in a world where people are encouraged to think only through binary opposition, it thrusts us into an impossible position. If you are not strong, then you are weak. There is no middle ground. Before, during, and after the era of Black girl magic, the persistence of the idea that Black women must rise to unparalleled levels of resilience, even when living ordinary lives, was very much reinforced by the notion that we are magical and therefore not human. To be magical is quite literally to be superhuman after all. Now, I already touched on how most people, especially nowadays with the clock and bird apps serving as our public square, for most, binary opposition as the lens for nearly all discussion is the norm. Groupthink, mob mentality, whatever you want to call it, it's bleak out there. But I need to be unequivocal when I say that in detailing the ways in which Black girl magic, strong Black woman, when I say that these seem 100% positive only to the glib and that these actually sustain harmful stereotypes, that is not to say that I dream of a world where Black girls make nothing of themselves and have zero life aspiration. The solution to one extreme is not to swing to the other. I am not suggesting that the end game for a Black girl's life pinnacle is to be a kept woman hashtagging soft life under endless TikToks of her ironing Givenchy drawers every damn day. That's not even what soft life is supposed to mean, but I digress. By no means do I equate the identity or position of Black women as something to be pitied or constantly bemoaned, because that too is absurd. That's not why I'm ready to sunset Black girl magic. Low-key, the fact that our very existence has been equated with magic in the first place is the flex. We know this. But we should be seen as worthy and valued without having to be a model exotical who can run on a treadmill in heels while also earning a PhD. Too many people only care about black girls when they are unbelievably extraordinary. You have to live a life that's a fucking Marvel superhero origin story just for anyone to even care if you get abducted. Otherwise, the typical response to our trauma and suffering is indifference. Who else is expected, including by each other, to meet such magical standards within our societal hierarchy just to be valid? It's sort of like that meme or tweet or whatever it is that says something like, supporting black women only when you're attracted to them is not supporting black women. Ordinary should be available to us. In our heart of hearts, I think we all just want to be ordinary, meaning understood, relatable, normal, and not alone. And that can also happen with aspirations to be extraordinary. Unfortunately, human nature is, by nature, binary. Plenty of social and cultural anthropologists have documented how we self-sort, and tribalism is, for better or worse, part of our human pathology. But why does this binary seem to swing to even greater extremes when y'all decide to care or not care about black girls? Being magical should never have been a prerequisite to being cared for. Thing is, as black women, we've continued to meet a bar that never seems to stop rising. We rise to the occasion, meeting the double standard within a double standard every damn time, even though effortless things that just come to you naturally are rather often neither effortless nor natural. They can require a metric fuck ton of effort, and completing the ask may not be something that comes naturally at all. Sometimes, a lot of times, we just make this shit look easy, which just perpetuates the impossible demands, the endless expectations that the default entry-level setting is set to magical. And these are demands which we meet, thereby subverting said demands as actually being impossible. Because we do this shit. Magic indeed. And we've magicked ourselves into quite a pickle, ladies. What I'd like to see, though, is a world where there is no expectation or assumption made about black women achieving something or accomplishing something because she is magical. What I'd love is a world where it's never assumed nor required that we be any of these things at all, and where we have as much breadth for self-determination as Skylar and Chelsea do. We are who we are not because of magic, but because we're talented, intelligent, creative, tender-hearted, sometimes tender-headed, brave, or maybe none of these things, and or 1,000 other different things, a whole range of tings, and infinite combinations and concentrations from one of us to the next, all of which are valid and owe you zero magic. Disaggregate the myriad qualities and elements that go into our endeavors to thrive and into existence simply as human beings. Human beings who happen to be black girls. We deserve the full spectrum of whatever that can mean, just like everyone else. Talk terminated. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end of this video. I do have an upload goal in mind this year, which has not been the case for some time, but I ain't telling y'all what my goal is because I refuse to be held accountable. But if you're bored and you want a little more time with your girl T, I'm gonna do what I did last year actually and give y'all a free little taste, little sample, little tooty toot of my Patreon content. And I'm gonna link my 2022 top 10 hair, skin, and beauty favorites vidya. But beyond that, I'm tired of talking and I have to go to physical therapy. So make sure y'all stay safe, stay dangerous, and never trust Frank. Bah.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm gonna tell you that now.